And now for our feature presentation.
Are you ready?
Streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts with Brad and Jay.
Hey, what a stupid question.
Oh, I've already had 2 glasses too of Tennessee whiskey.
Jay, you've done so good, and you have to muck it up right at the end. Jay's gray. He's all gray now. Look at his beard.
I got grayer, right? Everyone in the chat, thanks for stopping by and enjoying yourselves. We know you did. Let's get 3 legends here with us.
This evening, author Leslie J. Anderson joins us to talk about the UNMOTHERS.
Welcome to the show.
Well, happy Friday to all. Thank you once again for joining us for a new episode of Paper Cuts. I'm sure it's hot where you are. Jeez, steaming. About 110, 120 here. Is that possible? 130?
Nah, I don't think 120, Jay.
Yeah, 140, Central Ohio. Yeah, give or take a few degrees. So grab your drinks and cool off with our show this evening. Leslie J. Anderson's here joining us to talk about the UNMOTHERS. Leslie, thanks so much. Is it hot where you are? I think we're in the same state.
We are, yes. It is. When I got into my car this morning at about 10 o'clock, it was already 102. So,
Yeah.
Whew.
See, Brad, it is hot here in Ohio. So
Yeah. Just melting. Everyone's just melting away.
it is. You could probably fry an egg on the. Let's do an experiment right now. Let's go out and try to fry an egg on the sidewalk.
I'll take the camera with me. We'll go.
I'm
We'll do
giving
some,
up trying to keep any plant alive, like in my garden. I've given up. Like they
They're
are a
dead.
sacrifice now to summer.
I haven't cut the grass for 2 weeks. It'll be like cutting dirt. No reason to do that. Yeah. And plus, now it's football season, and it does not feel
That's
like
right.
football season.
No, it starts tomorrow. I feel sorry
Yeah.
for them. They're gonna be dead tomorrow.
Buckeyes play at a 3:30 game, and they're gonna be sweating like crazy out there. So, yeah. Well, that was the sports talk part of the show. Leslie, how are you doing? What are you normally doing on a Friday night besides talking to 2 dopes from microphones here?
Oh man. I had a very exciting day of work. Currently moving offices in 102-degree heat, so that's
Nice.
fun.
Nice.
Love that for us. So I think before this, I was laying face down on the couch, and I think my plan for after this is to continue to lay face down on the couch.
There you go.
I may have a popsicle later.
Just
Stay
melt
cool
it
with
on
the
your
popsicle.
face.
Yeah,
Just
just
let
put it, yeah.
go.
Those are my.
Don't even eat it.
those are my
Just melt it on
crazy
your
preferences.
face.
Yeah.
From the freezer to the couch, that thing's going to be a melty mess.
Maybe I'll just get in the freezer.
There you go.
Roll up in there.
Yeah, we have windows, a big freezer in the garage, so I'll just sit in there eating popsicle.
Yeah.
That's what we're
No
gonna
notes.
do. That's what we're gonna do.
That could be an idea for your next book. Just sitting in a freezer somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, no, I'm not really a partier. Not really a.
No.
I'm not really a sports person either. Sorry. I'm a staying at home kind of girl.
I'd rather watch the sports at home. That's I'm not that
There you go.
age. I don't want to do crowds anymore. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to be out amongst the people anymore. I don't want all
That's
that
fair.
stuff. So
That's fair. My day job coworkers keep trying to get me to go to Buckeye games, and I'm like,
Oh, don't do it. You don't want to go to a Buckeye game. They're
no,
terrible.
thank you. Yeah.
no, they're fun, and I've been to a handful. But the problem is, like, I'm like, oh great, I'm kind of close. But when you're close, you can't see what's happening at the other end of the stadium. So it's like, shoot. Now I want to get way up there and watch what's going on. So, plus it's different because you don't hear the announcement. We're talking about sports. Okay, we're here to talk about.
We're talking about a book, Jay.
your
Talk about this
book, The UNMOTHERS. Here.
Yes. Mine's my copy.
Yes.
So this is your debut novel, right?
Yes, it is.
So when it came out earlier this month, right?
Yeah, it
Earlier
came
in August?
on August 6th.
What's the reception been for it so far?
So far I've been blown away by the positive reception. People have been really excited about it. Some of the criticisms of it, I have actually been like, yeah, that's fair. That's some people don't like it has multiple viewpoints, and it has quite a few. And some people have found that difficult to follow, and I'm like, That's fair. Yeah, that's I can see how that would be an issue. But a lot of people, I mean, people have been very kind and very excited about it. Yeah, it's been kind of fantastic, honestly.
Cool. I was going to bring up the multiple viewpoints since you went ahead and jumped into it. You want to give us a little bit of a synopsis of what's going on here for those who have not read it yet?
Yeah.
Kind of an elevator pitch here.
Absolutely. So The UNMOTHERS is about a reporter named Marshall who loses her husband and kind of she doesn't go crazy, but she loses herself a little bit. So her editor, in order to kind of kick her back into gear, sends her to a small town to investigate a dumb tabloid story. Kind of just like, hey, go figure your shit out before you come back.
Right.
I did not ask if I could swear on this podcast, so I hope that is okay.
No, you're completely good.
What?
You're all good.
Not.
So she goes to the small town to investigate this tabloid story of a horse giving birth to a human baby. And she discovers that that is not the strangest thing that is in this town. And then the bodies start piling up.
The bodies hit the floor.
Then the bodies hit the floor.
Yeah.
That
like
one
What was the one tabloid? National Enquirer?
National Enquirer, yeah.
That boy?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking when I read this.
Good.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the only one because that's what I thought of when I first read the whole premise of it. So
I loved those when I was a kid, standing at the
I love the
checkout.
commercials for them. It's like who's dating who,
Right.
and who has two heads. What?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
it's like
always twins fall
half
in love.
mermaid, half man. Yeah.
And you had to like know all the different storylines. It was like a cryptid like
Soap
romance, basically. Yeah, soap opera,
Right.
exactly.
Do they still have those? Like when you're
I
checking
think
out?
they do. Oh, they're not anymore? Is it gone?
No.
Not National Enquirer anymore. Now they're all like, what
It's
is
all about the celebrities.
cats,
Yeah.
that sort of,
And they were always by like the checkouts because I mean that's of course when you're waiting, 6 or 7 deep. Hey, let's read this and buy it. I try to avoid stores. So I don't know how the checkouts are anymore. So
yeah. I have a 4-year-old, so I also try to avoid standing in line
exactly.
because I have 4 minutes to get out of that store.
There you
I
go.
will pay the extra for the groceries people to put it in my trunk for me. Same places, Walmart, Kroger, all that stuff. I don't know how we got into this subject too, but so let's go back to the multiple viewpoints. What I was interested in that, where did that concept come from? Why'd you do it? And how much did you mix yourself up while writing this from all the different viewpoints you were putting in
Sure. I actually this is multiple viewpoints is kind of where I always want to write, because it's generally how I think of a story. Is there's one action, a main action, horse gives birth to a human baby, and I really think of a story of like, okay, how is everyone viewing this? How is Agatha, the new grandmom, viewing this? How is the father viewing this? How is Marshall viewing this? And when I'm building a story, that's usually how I do it, is think of the characters and think of what they're experiencing, and then choose which plot points would be most interesting. So actually, my work in progress right now has one viewpoint, and I'm finding it difficult. I want to be in someone else's head real bad. I don't know what that says about what's going on in my head, but that is how I think of it. Is just a series of different viewpoints that sort of come together into one cohesive story.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that some of the horror people who've read it had difficulty with the multiple viewpoints, because I feel like fantasy books, most of those are multiple viewpoints. So I think it's interesting the different genres and how the stories are told, either from one perspective or multiple. Like, I guess most horror readers aren't used to multiple viewpoints, it seems like.
I think it's a preference. Some people like different points of view over, some people can't handle third person point of view, and some people hate time skips. I think it's a valid preference. I love it. I also love it in reading.
I do too.
I just think it's so fun, and it just shakes up the story so much. And I always love looking at how a single event can totally change from person to person, like how they react to it, their interpretation of it. I just always think that's fascinating.
Right. I don't read fantasy at all, but I enjoyed the multiple viewpoints, and I love time skips, all that stuff. Anything that would break up the story from the norm. That's what I look for. Whether it's horror, grit, lit, whatever. I don't read fantasy, so I don't know if that's what happens in fantasy, but that's what stuck out the most with me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think also like if you read a ton, that those sort of experimental things stick out more to you. You know, if it may not be a good introduction to the genre if you don't tend to horror. It might be a little jarring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to, like, did you have to narrow it down? Did you have like a bunch more viewpoints and cut some out, or
I actually had to add some.
You had to add some? Okay.
I ended up adding some after had a great I was lucky enough to get a really wonderful editor at Quirk, Rebecca Gyllenhaal, and she suggested adding 2. So I believe it was Jake and who else did I add? Oh, Jason. Jake and Jason both got viewpoints. And I loved working with Rebecca because I never felt like she was changing the heart of the book or themes or that was always her. Like she got it right away and she wanted to maintain that. And every addition or subtraction she suggested just augmented that and just made it more powerful. So as soon as she explained her reason for those 2 viewpoints, I was like, oh, absolutely. That makes complete sense. So yes, I actually ended up adding more viewpoints than I had originally.
Heidi's got a question for you in the chat. Wants to know if would you consider it folk horror?
Absolutely. I think folk horror is, in its very basic, folk horror is, trees are scary. But I think that in a more complicated way, it's there's a way that we do things just in case. Someone didn't do things correctly, and now we're going to find out what happened. Like what happens when you don't do things as they should be done. So yes, I absolutely folk horror.
I was going to ask you about that.
I got some superstition stuff out of, and horses, by the way, Heidi. There's horses. Yeah.
So I was
a horse girl in high school, so that is in there a lot.
Did you have your own pony?
Yeah, my family had horses. I grew up in Michigan.
Come on.
Oh, I know. I'll really break your heart and tell you that my mom taught at University of Michigan.
Oh, Jay. Jay's gonna cry himself to sleep at night.
Sorry. I left though. I left.
That counts for something. Yeah. That does count.
But yeah, so in Michigan it's a little bit different. In Ohio, it's really hard to find a place to ride that's affordable at all. Yeah. In Michigan, it's one of the most horse populated states because a lot of people have backyard horses. You need like 1 acre per horse and you need a water source. You can provide the water source through a trough. So like a lot of people are in 4-H or are in the Young Farmers of America and they have horses in their backyard. And so I had a lot of opportunities to ride these horses. And we kept our horses at somebody else's farm. Yeah. And so, yes, I did not have a pony. I had a off-the-track thoroughbred named Tristan.
I think it matters where you live here in Ohio because my wife's family is Southern Ohio. So they have horses for my kids to ride. So, and they're in 4-H and all that stuff. Me being a city boy, I have no clue what's going on. I'm the outcast down there. But yeah, I think Southern Ohio, there's a lot of horses.
Just bring carrots.
Northern Ohio is just a lot of traffic and gangs. So
I don't know if that's true, but
depends on what part of Ohio.
Yes.
So I'm assuming all of your experience with horses that went a great deal to writing this novel for you. All the details about the horses and all that kind of stuff. Did you have to do much research on your own, or just bringing all that experience with you?
My main research, I just brought the experience. For horses, it was mostly like, let me make sure that I've got this term right. And, quickly Googling it. My main research for the book was, I do touch on the opioid crisis. And it was very, very important to me that I did that in a respectful way.
Right.
I think it's very easy, especially in a horror book, to demonize that population and that addiction. And I really did not want to do that. I wanted to treat people respectfully. And it's such an issue, even in Northern Columbus, that I really wanted to understand it completely before I wrote about it. So that was where, for this book, that was my main research.
Right.
Okay.
As far as the horse stuff goes, yeah, that just was all for my brain.
Why horses for the book? Was that just, is that where the idea started from? The horse having a baby, or?
Yes, it did start from that.
Okay.
I cannot tell you why, honestly. It was a thought that popped in my head, and I was like, yeah, that's weird. Let's do that. But as far as horses, I've written quite a few short stories.
Okay.
I believe one of them was in Nightmare Magazine. I think another one was in Apex
Mhm.
that had horror horses, because people are afraid of horses. And as somebody who understands horses, you should be afraid of horses. They're freaking scary. They're megafauna. They can smush you with their hooves.
Yeah.
Like they are scary. And a lot of people don't understand them. A lot of people feel a huge disconnect from farm life in general, but especially from like horses, which are, you know, a little bit alien. They look a little bit alien. They don't really look like the kind of animals that we interact with on a day. So I do feel a little bit like I'm cheating, kind of with the weird deer thing that you often see in horror.
Yeah.
Deer are a little bit creepy. They're a little bit other. The same thing with horses. And I wanted to just play with that and really sort of tease it out.
Yeah.
I feel like people who have never been around horses don't realize how big horses actually are.
Right.
Yeah. My first job was at a stable. No one's surprised. And when I was first dating my husband, he went to pick me up from my job, and I was letting the horses out, and one of them turned around and decided to charge me. And I just, you know, put my hand up in the air and made noises, and they turned around and left. And I turned around, and my then boyfriend, now husband, just sheet white, like eyes, like, and he's just like, "What did you just do?" And later he was like, "You know, most people are afraid of horses, right? Like, it's normal to be afraid of horses." Yeah.
You're like the shaman, just telling it to stop.
Right. I was, yes. Like,
They're
be
so
gone.
big.
They are.
Huge.
They really, really are. And I'm lucky
Yeah.
that like I did not get seriously injured during my like 10, 15 years working with horses. I did get often injured, but not seriously injured.
That's good. So I want to go back to the superstitions really quick, because there are some superstitions in the book, like milk and sugar on the graves and not going into the fog and stuff. So how did the superstitions for your story, how did those influence the actions of the citizens of Rayford while you're writing it?
And I learned some new ones too, by the way, from reading this.
Did you?
I didn't know it. I didn't know a lot of these. So.
And some of them are actual Appalachian
Okay.
like superstitions. And one of the things I've noticed with, you know, there's a lot of essays written about the ties between Scotland, Ireland, and Appalachia. And one thing I've noticed about both of those groups of people is that they kind of feel the same way about their superstitions. Like, they believe very deeply in them, in that they follow them, but also they'll be like, but we don't really believe that. Like, I had a friend who was visiting from Ireland, and he's like, I don't believe banshees are real, but if I hear something outside at night, I'm not going to go outside.
Right.
And same thing with my Appalachian friends who are like, I don't believe that there are unpeople outside, but if you hear whistling at night, do not go outside. Like, just in case. So like passing a baby around a table leg, that is a real one. The belief is that it helps with colic. Obviously the iron over the doorway, that's a pretty well known one. The sugar on the gravestone, I made up. That is totally me. The monster is made up. That is also totally me. So I have a combination of actual beliefs in there and my own superstitions. But I think what differentiates Rayford from maybe real Appalachia is it's not just in case. They are living their lives kind of trapped by those superstitions. Even as they kind of give lip service to the fact that they don't believe them.
Right. So what are you going to do when people take the made up ones and they start catching on, and you're going to hear about it like in 5 years? So get back to you like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah,
I should get credit
God,
for this one.
Happens. I really hope that happens.
That'd be cool.
That would be incredible. I will be excited. I guess.
I do think it's funny, like, we do the superstitions and don't even think about it, like knock on wood and, like, you know, if you break a mirror, get 7 years bad luck. Like, everyone, I think, subconsciously does those, but not even really thinking that they're superstitions. So I think it's just kind of part of our society, the superstitious stuff, and you have your own in this story as well. I don't know. I think it adds to making the place feel more realistic.
Yeah, walking under a ladder, the black
Yeah.
cat, all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
see if
there's
any picked
almost
up.
second nature to people. You just see it and like, don't do that.
Yeah, you don't even think
And
about it.
yours is going to catch on. The ones you made up is going to catch on. You're going to go to grave sites and see
Milk
like,
and sugar.
milk and sugar on top of some of the graves. Like,
That would be when I was in high school. I was in tech crew because I was a dork. Sorry, tech crew people. We are all dorks. And I made up this story because I was bored about a ghost in the theater of a kid who had like fallen into the orchestra pit and died. And 5 years later, I went back to pick up my little brother from the same high school. And he goes, "Did you hear about the ghost in the theater?" And like,
nice.
That's
so
awesome.
proudest. I was so proud. So like, yes, I hope that that lives on in the same way.
That's funny.
That'd be great.
So
Yeah.
you've already started the urban legends. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I gave him a name. He had the same name. His name was Kevin. He kept that name. He died in the same way. Like, it was pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah. It was maybe my first ghost story.
There you go. All the way back to high school. So I wanted to so the beginning of the book, like not even the first chapter, but I guess I wouldn't call it a prologue, but at the beginning it talks about like the different myths from like ancient society about where horses come from the sea and stuff. And you specifically mentioned, Rayford's not by the sea, that maybe the horses from there come from somewhere else. So like, did you, going through that kind of, I guess, creation process for horses, did that help influence the book or sort of lead it on its path where the monster came from or anything like that? The different superstitions and things they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the heart of this book is sort of where that monster comes from, where the horses come from, where like all of this comes from. And the answer more or less is the rage of the women of the town and the powerlessness of them, which kind of gets manifested in a lot of unfortunate ways. But part of that whole issue, which is in that tiny, mini prologue, is the unspoken part of it. Like, where did the horses come from? Nobody knows. There isn't a myth. There isn't an explanation for it. Nobody's talking about it. It's a secret simply because no one is talking about it. Nobody brings it up, in the same way that like the monster is a secret because no one's talking about it. And the suffering of these families is a secret simply because no one is talking about it, but everybody knows. So yeah, I think that was kind of a parallel that I was trying to draw of the things that we discuss and the stories that we tell kind of define where we are. And if you don't define where they are, they just become mysteries, and spooky mysteries sometimes.
I thought it was interesting that like all the women in town, it's been handed down generation to generation. They know about the ritual and all the secret stuff, and the men they kind of maybe know about the monster, but then they seem to kind of forget about it if it's not like in front of them. So that's like important as well to have it where the men don't really kind of know what's going on, but not really.
Yeah. So and then that's again the like, none of them just ask. Like even Daly, when he does ask, he asks in like a threatening way that makes Emma really not want to tell him. But any of these guys could have just asked. Like, nobody just asks. No one just talks about like, hey.
Men are stubborn. Just, I don't know if you know this or not. Men are stubborn. They don't want to ask for directions. So they're not going to ask for something they should know about.
I have heard that. But I think that there's a lot of like women things that men don't know anything about, and also are kind of uncurious about. I remember when I was getting ready to give birth to my son, and my husband and I were taking a tour of the maternity ward with a bunch of other couples. And, we're all rapid fire asking questions. And then one of the guys just goes like, "You guys are asking all these questions and I don't know what any of this is." And then sort of like looks at us like we're supposed to like be like, "Haha, you're so funny and edgy."
Yeah.
but like we're all looking at him like, you're an idiot. Like, why aren't you curious about this life-changing experience that's about to happen? And I think I've had that. I think most women have had that experience where, you know, they'll be like, well, why don't you just hold a period like pee or something? And it's like, okay, the level that I need to explain at this point, like just, you know, just no curiosity. And then that sort of like ignorance comes out.
Right.
Yeah, I think
I show my ignorance. I'm the only guy in my house. I have 2 daughters and my wife. So I'm beat. I have to ask. I'm like, I bet
you've caught on to some things though.
I have
patterns that are
by my second kid. I've learned from the first kid and from the wife. So it's, you know, but I still do the whole. That's a mom question. She'll be home in about an hour. So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
for sure.
So before you wrote this book, you have some poetry stuff out there too, correct? Some poetry collections.
Yeah.
Are those horror as well, or are they separate?
Some of the poems are horror. They are. I tend to describe them as speculative poetry because I do horror, fantasy, science fiction poetry, some personal poetry as well. But yes, there are some horror poems in there, and I've had some horror poems published in horror magazines and anthologies too.
What is your writing process? Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna say the 2 books are An Inheritance of Stone, which sadly is no longer in print because the publisher is no longer publishing, and Take This to Space, which is available.
Okay.
So like your writing process from poetry to like a prose novel like this, do you approach that differently, or do you kind of go into it with the same mindset?
I used to approach it differently. This is not the first novel I've finished. It is the first novel to be published. Hopefully more to come.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think I really approached, I was like, oh, fiction is totally different. I'm going to approach it from a plot centric point of view. And I think that is why, well, I mean, there's probably lots of reasons. I probably got better at writing. But I do think that was a weakness in like the first couple books that I tried to write, was that they were very plot focused, and I was not using my skill, my main skill, which was language. And not this book, but a previous book that I finished, which was the first one that got me talking to my agent. I really gave myself permission to just be a poet on the page. To just play with language and to build a world and kind of just wander around in it and see what I bumped into. And I loved it. It was so much fun. And I really have to thank Jeff Vandermeer for that one. Reading his Annihilation, he does that. He's built a world and he kind of just walks around in it and talks about it. And it's creepy and beautiful and poetic. And I'm like, oh, you can do this? You're allowed to just do this? This is awesome. So I approach both kind of similar at this point, in that what kind of language, what kind of theme do I want to play around with and wander around in and look at stuff? Like, what kind of museum do I want to build? Right. So yeah, I'm getting more and more similar instead of further and further away from the 2 writing processes.
Right. I mean, this may sound weird, but I could kind of tell. I knew because I'm doing research for the show, but I could reading the book, I could tell the way some of the sentences were structured, the way you manipulated certain words, certain places, that you probably did poetry before. Does that make sense? Because I mean, I do the same thing where you can manipulate sentences certain ways, and the structure have it set up a certain way. You reverse words, and normally that you see that when someone who does other things outside of just writing these stories over and over. So
I think it's kind of a like when you see a football player take some ballet. When you're really paying attention to the individual muscles and like the individual steps that you're taking, like you have to in poetry, because you have a tiny amount of space, it changes how you write when you have a great big field in front of you.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that did make sense to you. I know. People listening are like, "What the hell is he talking about?"
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Okay, good.
For me personally, I would much rather read a book with just beautiful prose and even if the characters sat in a room the whole time. I'd much rather read that than like plot heavy, bunch of action and stuff. For me personally, I love when people write really pretty prose. And again, as long as it's pretty and interesting, the characters should just talk the whole book, and I would be like, yeah, this is great, and nothing could ever happen.
Yeah, I have moods. I go back and forth. I'm currently actually reading Crown of Throne of Thorns, Thorn of Rose of I'm sorry.
I think it's Crown of Thorns, right? Is that what it is?
I'm sorry. It's a fantasy romance, and it's just all action. Like it's just action. Like it's moving so fast, and I'm enjoying that. And I will probably do a very like verbose, prosy book next to have like a totally different feeling. I like them both. All books are good books.
There you go. When you were I don't know. I listened to Stephen King's On Writing recently, so this is kind of where my questions come from. And he was talking about like on your first draft, you just kind of spit it all out, and then when you go back, that's when you kind of discover what your themes are, and then you'll build upon that when you're going through your second draft. So, with this, did you go into this book kind of wanting to hit the themes of like the opioid epidemic and like teen pregnancy and like kind of the rural small town, kind of the plights that they're going through? Was that like your intention going in, or was that more going back through? It's like, oh, I've kind of hinted on these a little bit. Let's build these up a bit more.
Yeah, I think I diverge from Mr. King's writing advice a little bit. I think I do it from sort of theme and vibe first. I know what I want to talk about and the world in which I want to do that in. And then I will build, the plot a little bit more. But I will say now that I have connections with like publishers and an agent, I have had to dramatically change how I do that because they're not interested in vibes at all.
Yeah.
I can't be like, hey, I kind of want to write a book that feels like this, or I want to write a book that's on an island, or like, how about a haunted castle? They do not care. They would like to see a plot and like characters and ideas. And so I've had to bully my poor brain into doing that for, if I would like to do another book, which I would really, really like to do another book. So I have changed dramatically how I do my books now, as I am having to pitch or change or edit or plan or be in a discussion with the publisher. So we'll see how that goes. But it has been a really wonderful exercise as a writer in thinking about a book in a different way.
Did you have to go through that same thing with Unmothers? The Unmothers?
No, Unmothers was 100% came from vibes, and then I built the plot around it. So it worked. But then they're like, hey, would you like to write another book with us? And I'm like, absolutely, I would like to write another book with you. And they were like, okay, great. Give us an outline. And I'm like, I haven't written the book yet. Okay. So, obviously it will change, and they're very open to being elastic. And but having to sit down and be like, okay, plot, here we go, was a very weird and honestly kind of cool exercise. Like once I got past the like, I can't do this, there's no way, this is not how my brain works, once I told that voice to shut up, it was a really cool way to challenge myself and make myself think of a book differently.
Do you think that'll make it easier going forward to pitch and write other books? It's kind of
absolutely. Yeah, I think if I can combine the two, if I can keep that poetic approach, that vibe, that like feeling, which I think is easy because it's very naturally how I do things, but I can also attach it to this like thought more about pacing and plot. I think that it can only improve it. I hope, that's my hope. But yeah, I think it will change how I do books going forward. And I hope that overall it ends up being a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With those specific themes, like you personally, what were you wanting to say or make statements about within the sort of structure of the Unmothers, like the opioid and, not necessarily even teen pregnancy, but just kind of pregnancy in general, and like small town America, how it's kind of, I think in the beginning of the book, you mentioned like the factory had gone out. So like pretty much all that was left was the horse industry So just kind of how that's kind of crumbling small town America and stuff.
Yeah. So
a big loaded question for you.
a lot of questions. Yeah. I'm trying to
You just
think.
got deep on a Friday night, Brad.
I mean, as far as like small town goes, I mean, I was born in Detroit, and people from Detroit will go, "Were you born in Detroit, or were you like out?" And I go, "I was born at Henry Ford Hospital," and they go, "Oh, Detroit."
Yeah.
Like middle of Detroit. And then we moved to New Hudson, which is it was not anymore, but it was a tiny, tiny agricultural town. It had like one stoplight, a store, like a grocery store, a gas station, and for some reason, a video rental place. But
I miss video rental places. I miss them.
Me too. And that one was like one of the like, no straight walls, no good lighting, like super shady. Like, where did you get these? Did they fall off a truck? Perfect.
Had this special room in the back for those.
Oh yeah, speeded curtain, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, absolutely. Formative, absolutely. So, and then I learned to ride in another small agricultural town, South Lyon, and I spent innumerable hours at the stable. I lived there. Like, I went to school and I hung out at the stable. That's what I did for basically like 20 years of my life. That was home. And I saw firsthand these small towns that relied on maybe one or two businesses. And Detroit too, relied on the automobile industry. And once it left, crumbled.
Right.
And full of just incredibly proud, hardworking people who could not get their feet under them. And yet continue to be proud, hardworking people. And I really, I idolized a lot of them, and I saw that their struggles. And I also saw things that they struggled with that were of their own making. A lot of times simply not being able to communicate or to accept or give help in the way that the characters are in the book. As far as motherhood and pregnancy, I wrote this book while I was pregnant and while many of my friends were getting pregnant. And a lot of us were really mad for a lot of reasons. One of which is nobody told us a lot of the stuff about being pregnant. And I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at that, but like, did you know that your hip can dislocate while you're pregnant because your ligaments loosen? I didn't know that until my hip dislocated. And my doctor was like, yeah, that's normal. That's a normal thing that can happen. So you just hobble around.
And he just waves it off like, it's
just a normal thing. It's a normal thing. And it was that stuff always. Like every appointment, I was like, this hurts. This isn't like, I can't close my hands anymore. They're like, yeah, it's carpal tunnel. Again, your muscles and ligaments loosen. I mean, people at my job treating me different. Friends treating me different. People on the street treating me like. It was infuriating. It was infuriating. And it was in many ways kind of a body horror experience too. Like you really kind of lose control in the way that you are used to. Very glad I did it. Love my son very much. Furious that our culture seems incapable of having an honest conversation about childbirth and pregnancy. And seeing people get like incredibly uncomfortable when I would try to have those conversations or even make offhanded comments. Like I remember at one point, a bunch of my coworkers were going to do an axe throwing thing. And I said like, oh man, I want to go to that. I could use it to like work off some anger. And they're like, oh, what do you have to be angry about? And I'm like, I don't know, the fact that none of my shoes fit because my feet grew 3 sizes and my spine is literally changing shape. That seems like enough reasons. So, I wanted to write an angry book about pregnancy. And I wanted to write an angry book about small towns. And it seems like those two went together very, very well.
Did you find yourself like angry typing too? Like,
damn it. Yeah. There were some times when writing this book felt a little bit like an exorcism.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't go to axe throwing, so I was going to get it out somehow.
Right. What small town in Ohio is Rayford? Like based after? There's got to be some place.
You know,
I'm
actually-
thinking of one.
You're thinking of one.
Yeah.
I bet you've never heard of it. But I used to. I went to graduate school at Ohio University.
Yeah. Okay.
And taught
Down in
there for
Athens?
a hot second. And just outside of Athens is a town called Shade, Ohio. And that was when I tried to think of like the map of Rayford. Okay. That is what I pictured was Shade, Ohio.
Do you remember the radio station in Athens, Power 105?
Yeah.
I was a program director there for like 2.5 years.
Awesome.
Well, I know the whole area. I know that. Yeah. Yeah.
My dad went there, and an aunt on both sides went there, and so we were very confused because he kept telling me about the river. You know, be careful when the river floods. Don't go south when the river floods. And the river is like now a half mile south of campus. So I had no idea what he was talking about.
Well, I lived on the river too. I because I worked at a radio station over in Parkersburg, West Virginia. So I lived in Belpre, Ohio, and Belpre, Ohio is what I'm thinking of for Rayford because it's got.
I can also see that.
Yeah, it's got the one traffic light, and it's got it had like one furniture store, one quickie lube oil place for your car, one grocery store. And it was just like, I didn't know how to act. Moving from Columbus down there to work, I didn't know how to act. You know, I'm like, where's the store for this? And it had the video store with the special room in the back, all that stuff. So
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel a little bit at home in Athens, I have to say, in that area. Like I was like, oh, I get this. I got the vibe. I get what we're putting down.
Well, Athens is OU and nothing else.
So, that is true. Yes. Yeah. And oh man, it sure is a college. Sunday mornings cleaning the broken
Sunday
glass
mornings has got that smelly puke smell all over. Yeah. Especially around Halloween. Yeah. The Halloween parties.
Of like walking downtown and seeing your students and being like, all right, I don't think you're gonna have your essay tomorrow. We'll talk about it later, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be telling the story, but I'm going to anyway. So we would, the teachers and grad students would go do karaoke at the Smiling Skull, which is the biker bar down the hill. And I did Dixie Chicks Cowboy Take Me Away, and I think I nailed it. And I got off the stage, and there was an entire table full of my students.
Nice.
Oh, man.
And I made eye contact with them. I'm like, none of you are 21, so this didn't happen. And I was like,
but again, it's Athens. It's just a college town.
Yep. Nobody cares.
Maybe they had fake IDs. Maybe they didn't. Most places around there didn't care.
Only Tony's checks IDs because Tony's doesn't want to deal with undergrads.
Right. Yeah. See, it was weird when I was working there and I had to go out and do these appearances. It was different because I went to Otterbein and it was a dry area. At the time. Yeah, it was all just totally dry when I went, back in the late 1900s. Yeah. My kid calls it the late 1900s. But yeah, when I went to Otterbein, it was like totally dry. That area was dry. And I was working in radio. And I was down in Athens. It was just nonstop parties and stuff. I had to go to these parties because I was working in radio. I'm like, I missed this college life. This is what I missed by going to a different school.
Oh my God. I was not that type of student in undergrad. I was not that type of grad student. No. I was totally unprepared for it.
Yeah.
I'm a tea and fireplace kind of like a book and a fire. That's my jam. Yeah. I am not a throwing broken bottles into the street.
Nah.
Kind of.
Brad, you know nothing about these places, do you?
Sure
you
don't.
Feel left out? Yeah.
No, I don't feel left out because I'm in Kentucky, so I'm used to small towns and stuff too. So
right. So Rayford's just the whole state of Kentucky, basically.
except Louisville and Lexington, everything else is tiny.
The whole state's got one traffic light and one.
Yeah. Me and Laurel share the same phone line. Yeah.
You and Laura Hightower share the same internet connection.
So with the rage you had with this book, do you feel like did you get all that rage out, or do you feel like any other coming books?
More rage.
Are you gonna write more books? Are any more books going to be about pregnancy too, or is this going to be your pregnancy book?
No, I think maybe not specifically in this way, but I do want to keep. I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but so many people have reacted to this book in a way that's like this makes sense to me. Like I felt this way, or like I don't feel like I've read about these kind of characters or these kind of like issues. And I think that that's happening, you know, more and more people are writing about these sort of things. But in a lot of ways, horror about pregnancy in the past was very much like a community fear of horror. Like even Rosemary's Baby.
I was gonna say, yeah.
It's sort of like a looking into this pregnancy. It's not as much of like the parenthood and pregnancy. You get it a little bit with like Damien, that sort of thing, like the creepy child sort of you know, there's that scene where like the dad is like trying to kill him and he can't, and he's like, he bursts into tears. Like that's the sort of thing I think that I would like to explore more. So maybe not necessarily like the physicality of pregnancy, the actual like being pregnant, but I would like to continue to write about motherhood and parenthood and creepy ass children. I think that
creepy ass children. That's such a great horror trope. The creepy ass kid.
Yes, I love the creepy ass kid so much.
You got to write what you know. So you got to write.
Okay.
Are you calling her kid creepy, Jay? That's rude, Jay.
She says he's asleep now, so.
My kid is a tiny ray of sunshine.
There you go.
Even saying that, I was putting him to bed once, and we heard a train whistle, and he whispered to me, "They're getting closer." So, like, even the most sunshiny kid can be a creepy kid. What he meant is the train is getting closer. Yeah. The train cars are coming closer to us. But at the time, I was like, okay, I'm leaving the state. Yeah.
So have you woken up with your kid hovering beside the bed, just staring at you? Yeah.
Yes.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. That happened the other day, except that, so he was like an inch from my face, and I opened my eyes, and he's right there, and he goes, "Mama, do you want to hear about whale sharks?" And I go, it's
very important you know now about whale sharks.
Right this moment, it's 3 a.m. It is whale shark time. Yeah. Yes.
Mine's gonna be up multiple times, just standing there breathing heavily beside the bed and doesn't say anything until I wake up. Like, get out. So yes, kids are creepy.
Honestly, the inch from my nose is not as terrifying as the standing in the backlit doorway. That
just a silhouette.
Heart attack, instant. Like, yes.
Because you're standing there waiting. How long do I have to stay here before you wake up? Notice I'm standing here. You know.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Psychically trying to make me wake up. Yeah.
Because they don't want to wake you up because then they might get in trouble. But if you wake up on your own and they happen to be there, it's okay.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. They haven't done anything. Absolutely. So yes, I want to write about creepy children. I want to write about problem parenthood. Yeah. I would love to, and I have plenty of rage, so I'm
get it all out. So I want to ask. So this might be maybe me looking too much into it or not, but like the ritual that the women in the town go through, was that kind of like a metaphor for like abortion in a way, or am I just reading too much into that?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, bodily autonomy was really like my main thought. Like what. And it especially like when I was always pretty pro-choice, pretty pro bodily autonomy. But when I was pregnant, that like doubled and tripled because I did not like being pregnant. I had a really difficult and high risk pregnancy, and it got scary sometimes. And I could sit in my body and think, what if I was forced to do this? What would I do to get out of this? Not necessarily even having the child, because I always wanted a child, but the physical pain and constant nausea and like my hip dislocating and things like that. What would I give? What would I sacrifice to get out of this? Especially if someone had done it to me. Like if someone had done it to me against my will. And that's where the ritual came from. It's like, I would kill a man. I would kill a man to get out of this. Let that hang in the
just silent.
That's a sound bite from when we promote this.
There you go.
Would kill a man.
I would kill a man.
Tonight we talked to Leslie J. Anderson about the UNMOTHERS. I would kill a man.
I'll kill a man.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I don't want it. I don't want to be like, this is 1-to-1 abortion. This is an abort. Like this in my book is an abortion, because it's not. It would be ridiculous to take a a concept, an issue that is so complicated and boil it down to this. But I think the question of bodily autonomy and feeling trapped in your body and like panicking and trying to get out even violently, I think that is where that parallel is. That I wanted people to, because horror at its heart is all about empathy, right? Like we want to empathize, because fear is, you know, being stabbed. You can be afraid of being stabbed. That's not horror necessarily. Horror is like, why is this specifically a terrifying idea? And so the horror element for me was getting readers to empathize with that feeling.
Right.
So not to go into like the political weeds too much, but with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, is that going to impact like the way you write stories in the future, as far as if you do include like the pregnancy aspect and bodily autonomy and stuff?
Yeah, I think in some ways I think of writing as service. You know, I'm writing for an audience, and I want to reflect that audience's fears and anxieties. And I think that those have only increased. It is scary to be in a body that you do not entirely control. I don't think that is a completely crazy thing to say, especially about horror stories. So I feel like I, in some ways, have a bit of a responsibility to not, you know, I've now said to my audience, like, I want to tell these stories, and I want to continue to tell these stories. I think they're important. They're fun. They can be fun too. There's a fun monster, and but I think also that there's an importance to taking apart those feelings and analyzing them.
Yep. So I want to, as far as the monster, like, did you, not to give away what it is or anything, but like, were you inspired by anything from like myth or folklore, or was it just all your own, let's create this crazy kind of monster thing?
I think the most direct inspiration was actually the monster from the movie The Ritual.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that one.
Netflix.
Yeah.
It's such a good monster.
Now that you said
design.
that, I could, the antlers, I'm like, okay, I could see it.
Yeah, so not exactly that. I didn't want to, obviously, like, that was not exactly what was in my head, but that feeling of that kind of human, kind of animal, kind of otherworldly, but of the forest creature, that is all of these things at once, was really the main inspiration.
My favorite description of it was the antlers, and it had like stars in the antlers. I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, good. I want to go off about how cool The Ritual is, but that's probably not what we're here.
That'd be another hour.
It's
you
such
can catch it now on Netflix. Yeah.
I recommend it.
Yeah.
So
The UNMOTHERS is what we're talking about with Leslie J. Anderson. For those just now joining us, you guys were talking off air about a New York Times thing. You want to bring that up and discuss that? Because I think I missed. I was not on Twitter. I was not on Twitter today, so.
Yeah. So I can get the exact article title here, but my book was reviewed in the New York Times today,
Nice.
With 2 other books as upcoming horror stories for the year. And let's see if I.
Gabino Iglesias is the reviewer, correct?
Yes, that is, yes. And let me see here if I can get the actual title here. 3 new horror novels full of terrors that are all too real.
Ooh.
Did you read his review?
I did. Yeah, it was really incredibly nice. And it's funny because earlier in the day he had posted about wanting to do an anthology about liminal space horror, and I tweeted at him, "I want to be in this," and he said, "I'll DM you." And then, but I did not know he was writing a New York Times article about me. So
well, he mentioned earlier this week when we were promoting the show. Didn't he mention that he loved the book?
Read the book.
Right. Yeah. So I did send him a message to clarify, like, I want to be in your anthology, even like regardless of what the nice things that you said about it. Like, I also think your idea for the book is really cool. I've only met him for like a minute once in a green room. So, but he seems incredibly kind and intelligent.
Well,
especially
when you
since-
go back and watch our old shows, you'll. We did talk to him. We talked to him on an episode. So
Is he nice?
Yeah, he was extremely nice. Yeah,
yeah.
It's for his, not his new book, but one before, like the Devil All the Time or Devil Call My Name. I can't remember what it's called, but it was for that book, which is also a really good book.
Yeah. So when you do your research on the show after doing the show, you'll find the episode.
Jay, stop it. What did it feel like for you personally to have your book talked about in the New York Times? Was that just
New York Times?
No, I mean, I think one of my friends texted me and I was like, I have no words, only screaming, which is basically all I could do for like 3 hours. I mean, it's dream stuff, right? That's the stuff of like the daydreams that we all have. You know, one day maybe.
Uh-huh. So like, did you know it was even like up for the option to be reviewed by them, or is it just like all like a
I'd
surprise?
heard they had reached out to my publisher to like get the spelling of my name correct. So we thought maybe.
Okay.
But
I'm just curious how like the background stuff worked, if you had any clue or.
Yeah, but no, I did not, like, nobody reached out to me. I did not know if something was going to happen, what day it would be. It was a complete surprise. Like, it was,
that's cool.
Somebody texted me and was like, actually, Allison Stein, who wrote Dust, texted me. And she was like, girl, you are in the New York Times. And I was like,
nice.
Yeah. And then
so
I ceased to function for several hours. Yeah.
So now you need to print it out and put it on your wall, frame
it.
Frame it. Yeah.
I guess that like it's not in the print, like it's going to be in the print version, but like nobody's sure when. So I have a team on it. I have a team of
the newspaper.
She put together a team to work on it for it. Nice.
A team of dedicated friends to Google me.
It's cool when anything like any kind of horror novel gets some kind of publicity like that, because you know the big ones you hear Stephen King and some of the bigger writers, but to get some of the, you know, here's a new horror, here's a spotlight on 3 horror, you know, novels or whatever, and you're one of them in the New York freaking Times. It's a lot of people.
Cool.
I know. I mean, I keep trying to think of something clever to say about it, but it's just incredible. Like, it really is the sort of thing, like when I was 10 and decided I wanted to be a writer, I thought like, oh, wouldn't it be neat maybe one day? But you don't really like believe that, like 100% believe that that's going to happen. And it did. It's crazy. It's crazy.
You're going to get a huge name that's going to see that list, and they're going to grab your book and they're going to quote it. And you're going to use that same snippet for all of your books for the future. Just use that same what is it?
Same blurb.
Blurb for every single one of your books for the future. So
yes.
You're made. Yeah, he got it.
Stephen King says, this looks neato.
Yeah,
that's
all you need, too.
Yep.
I mean, people make careers on that. So.
Yeah, he's been chatting out books recently, and he had, what was it, on CBS or whatever he was the other day.
Was he? I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was talking about whatever his new collection's called. He shut out like Tananarive Due and Keith Rawson and some other people, which is really cool.
That's good. I always like when, you know, the big names are like, all right, it's time to drop some friends.
Yeah.
Everybody go Google the following.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that helps. Even if he didn't read it, if he just says, this book's cool, go check it out.
Yeah.
That gets eyes on it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the nice things about entering face planting into the world of horror, as I have. Everybody has just been so wonderful. And like I said, I published in short stories in horror. So I knew that the horror, you know, community was very welcoming and shockingly sweet. But the extent to which people have been really welcoming and excited about
the horror community is really welcoming and nice and stuff. Screw those fantasy people. The horror community is
It's funny because like from the outside, people are like, oh, they write about all this
horror. They're like it's like the Hell's Angels of writing, you know.
Yeah, they must be terrible people, but they are really like the kindest people you ever meet.
There's so many subgenres underneath that horror umbrella that you're going to find somebody that likes something somewhere. So I think that's why it just makes up a big community, you know. So
I mean, my theory is that it is the empathy thing. Like, to write good horror, you have to understand empathy.
Yeah.
And to be a good person, you have to understand empathy. And so you get a lot of sweethearts who write horrifying, like awful stuff.
That's why they're nice in person, because they do all the awful stuff in the books.
Exactly. They get it
They
out.
do their
they
angry
move on.
typing.
Yeah.
Damn it,
So
his head came off. Yeah.
So I do want to ask, you mentioned a bit ago that you don't really see too many stories like this dealing with those kind of specific aspects of pregnancy, like the way you approached them. And I feel like, you know, a man might have had like the same maybe kind of concept, like the horse giving birth to a baby, but it wouldn't have come out the same way as you writing it. So like for you, what is like personally the importance of, you know, women's voices in horror? And I feel like in the last, I don't know, I've been kind of in the indie horror scene for like 4 or 5 years. I feel like
It's been that long?
more and more, like 2019, I think. So like 5 years, I think. But anyway, what's like the importance for you of like more and more women are getting out there and getting to tell their stories, like your version of this compared to, you know, like you said, Rosemary's Baby is different than the way you wrote it.
Right.
Yeah. I think that in general, there is a sense that the horror of womanhood is that it is icky. Historically, the horrible mother or the horrible pregnancy is icky, right? Like there's a grossness to the female body and to female things that is naturally horrific. And not always. I think that's often in very schlocky bad horror, right? But I think the perspective of what is normal and what is horrific is very different for men and women. For example, you know, my husband and I have very different ideas of like safety measures when I travel. I am very aware. I recently traveled to a city which is known for having a lot of people on the streets at night. And to me, that made me feel safer because I would be in a well-lit area with lots of people. It made him feel less safe because he anticipated physical violence from this group of people. That's a very different perspective. Those are two very, very different threats, but both of them are completely valid and based on our personal experiences. So I think that opening up to voices that have not necessarily either been allowed to speak or have been amplified in the past brings those perspectives in. And when I explained my perspective to him, he completely got it immediately. He understood what, you know, my viewpoint was like, nobody is going to grab me on a well-lit, busy street.
Right.
But somebody might start a fight with him on a well-lit, busy street in front of a bar. Because he's a big guy, he's got tattoos, like some dude might want to start something to prove something. Two totally different, scary situations. Whereas I often, when I have to travel to Orlando, feel very unsafe because there's a bunch of unlit pads. Hate that. That is a different threat. And I think that's the sort of, especially in horror, that's the sort of perspective that you get of what are we afraid of and why, and things that aren't a blind. They're a blind. I don't want to say like. I'm trying to say this in a way that is not like men just don't notice. That's not true. There's no reason to notice it. It is not in their experience. So why would they? And I think that it can do positive good in the world when we share our experiences. That seems like a very silly thing to say, but it is. It's true. Like being able to empathize with each other and to see each other's experiences is important.
It also makes for more interesting stories. No. It also makes for way more interesting stories, though, to get something from your perspective, or you know, someone else's perspective, or a person of color from their perspective and what they've gone through. I don't know other way to say it. It just makes it more interesting. Like you don't want to read the same thing over and over again, told the same way 100 times. Like your story, like you said, tells it from a different perspective than, you know, stories about, you know, creepy kids and pregnancy have in the past. So it's in the same wheelhouse, but it's different through, you know, a different set of eyes, which makes it brand new in a way.
Yeah,
and yours even went farther because it's your perspective, but through the point of view of several
Yeah,
People.
it's your race you put
Oh.
in there. Maybe
Right.
mad about it.
Yeah. I absolutely.
Do you have any, put you on the spot, do you have any recommendations of other horror books or novellas or whatever written by women that you've really enjoyed recently?
Yeah. Well, Alison Stein's Dust is coming out, like I said. Sister Maiden Monster, by Lucy Snyder.
Lucy Snyder.
is
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
that's over there
Yep.
somewhere on the shelf.
absolutely fantastic. You're putting me on the spot here, man.
Well, so, do you read much horror?
I
guess
do.
You don't have.
I mean, I read
okay.
a little bit of everything. Honestly, this may be weird. I'm going to forget her name. Sorry. But the book Horror for Weenies is, I think, an absolute delight.
Yeah, Emily C. Hughes, is that her name? I think.
I think that's right. Yeah,
Emily Hughes.
that was a very. I believe she describes weird, creepy kids as children with bad vibes, which I love. Yeah, that's another good one.
That's the PC way of saying it.
Yeah.
The creepy kids.
Yeah.
Not a woman writer, but a horror book of motherhood. What Kind of Mother? I just finished that.
Clay,
That's just on my mind.
Clay
McCloud
Chapman.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was
That's
great.
my favorite. That's my favorite book of his. I really like that one.
It was weird as hell, and
It was.
I loved it. And it just got weirder. Like I kept thinking, I'm like, all right, I got a handle on what's going on. Nope, I do not. I do not have a handle what's going on. Okay, I got it now. Nope, I do not. Another book that, again, not a woman writer, because you put me on the spot.
Yeah, it's okay.
Man, Fuck This House is a great parenthood, motherhood book.
Brian
Aspen?
Asman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Aspen or
I
Asman.
really, I don't know if that's technically horror. I guess it's horror. Yeah, it could be horror. It's a little silly. It's a little tongue in cheek. But I thought that was a really good, like, taking those creepy child, haunted house vibes and like deconstructing it and putting it back together again. I enjoyed that.
And like the catchiest title you'll ever come across.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
I know. It's so simple
many
too.
people
It's like,
stop playing
man,
it.
fuck this house.
Oh man, fuck this house. Yeah, just so good. I mean, it made me pick it up, and I really liked it.
Are you a big folk horror person? Do you like folk horror movies and books?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like horror, and this is often folk horror that kind of walks the line between cartoony and horrifying. Like Ravenous would be an example, or Tremors goes a little bit more over to goofy, but I love that. I think that's so effective. And that's
I think
often
even something like, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I think The Ritual kind of does that sometimes. Like, it's a little bit goofy when they stumble into that cabin and it's like so perfectly like little stick figures all over. And like that is creepy, but it's also like, come on, like this is silly. And I think they even say that, like, this is so over the top. I eat that up. I love it.
Makes me think of like, even like The Wicker Man and Children of the Corn. They're just kind of a little bit silly at times.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of kids. Let's just, again, the creepy kids again. Let's just beat the creepy kids up.
Kids keep coming back and haunting us here. That's just
Yeah.
So
I mean,
where do we go from here? What are you doing? Like a tour? Or are you making some appearances you want to chat out? Where can people find you?
My next appearance will be at
Without stalking you, of course.
I mean, I'm on the socials. Leslie J. Anderson writer on everything except Twitter, where it was weirdly taken. And so I am in cat on Twitter.
So somebody on Twitter is getting praise for your book right now.
Well, I think it actually, there's a painter, a really actually quite talented painter, Leslie J. Anderson in New York. I've chatted with her a couple times.
Okay.
I think she has it, which is fine. She can have it. There's also a baseball player, Leslie J. Anderson. I will be at Books on the Banks in Cincinnati in November. And I think that is my last book tour stop. My book tour is coming to an end. I will be in Granville on September 12th at the Granville Community Center, I believe. And I'll be doing a reading with Amy Butcher, who did a wonderful book called Mother Trucker, which is
that's a good title.
It is a great title. It's a nonfiction book about the only female ice road trucker.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
I never watched that show, but I've seen those commercials for it all the time.
She's not in the show, and
Okay.
and the subject of the book says that those women are like were hired in for the show. Like she doesn't know them.
I'm sure
Nobody
it's
knows who they
completely
are.
fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
she is like a legit like drives the ice road, and you can debate about like, oh, is it this ice road or that ice road? This, but it's a wonderful book regardless of the ice roadiness of it. And a wonderful book about Alaska. So she and I will be doing a reading in Granville on September 12th.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. The Unmothers is what we're talking about this evening, and along with Leslie's other bodies of work. So we can't thank you enough for wanting to stop by and hang out with us this evening. Hopefully, we're not taking you away from anything
From
too
melting.
important. Yeah, melting in the heat, or
Yep. I'm going
laying
back to the
face
couch.
down again, crying, or doing whatever it is you're doing. So we appreciate you stopping by. Definitely, we hope you come back and talk about your next your book.
Happy
whenever
to.
that happens. So.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, that's going to do it for all those in the chat. And for those who watch us later, thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with us and enjoying another episode of Paper Cuts as always. That's going to do it. Brad, you got anything else?
Leslie, thanks for hanging out with us. It was a really cool book. I love the monster in here. I love folklore stuff. So thank you for
I'm so glad
coming
that
on
you
and letting us chat with you about your novel. It was really fun.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was great.
All right, that's a wrap. Until next time, everyone.
Love you,
Thanks for
Jay.
joining us. I know.